Hi guys. So today we are going to talk about Adolf Hitler and specifically looking at his life through primary sources. Those primary sources are located in the Google Classroom post that I posted. So please have those up. Um, and I also posted the graphic organizer that you'll need for this project too. But this is just an intro before you do the activity. So you don't need to get those out just yet. Just make sure you can open them. And if you can't, let me know and I'll help you out. Also, another reminder, I have the World War I research project. That should be in Google Classroom as well. I have one post just dedicated to that project with a video summary and all the materials that you'll need for the project, as well as the groups that you're in, and you find the topics that your group is doing, sorry, on that sheet, and it looks like this. And that is also attached to the post, so make sure you're looking at that. Some things that were almost history. We're going to start by talking about things that were almost history. The first one being the Challenger. The Challenger was a rocket ship, shown here, that was set to launch on January 28th, 1986. And what was really monumental about this launch is that we had a science teacher aboard who was going to be the first teacher in space. She was a high school science teacher. It was super exciting. The whole country was watching, even kids in schools across the country were watching it. These astronauts' families were also on the ground, as well as the teacher's family. And it was very, very exciting. But unfortunately, about a minute and a half after takeoff, the rocket ship kind of catches on fire and explodes. And it actually kills all six of the crew members, including that high school teacher. So it's a very huge tragedy, and a lot of people were watching too. So that is really, really sad, and just I can't even imagine the feelings that they were feeling watching this. The whole reason that it explodes is that a seal on the rocket booster was actually weakened, which caused a fire. And when we look at these events, including this one, we have to think about what ways could this have been prevented. Probably system checking things, right? Making sure everything's good to go. Somebody the other day said that we should have tested it before it went up, or tested it even more before it went up. Those are just ways we could have, if we were to go back in time, we could have fixed this tragedy. But just like other tragedies, a lot of new rules and regulations come out of this. Just like the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, which we learned about in our immigration unit, a lot of rules and regulations come out of this to protect future astronauts, right? In the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, we saw rules coming out to protect future factory workers. So even though this is a tragedy, we get a lot of our rules that NASA uses today from this. So this guy right here is Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook. And I don't know if you guys know the story about how he founded Facebook, but he actually was a student at Harvard. He was majoring in computer science. And he actually creates this like mini Facebook almost, just for the Harvard school, right? Just for his school. And people start using it. It gets more and more popular. He drops out of college to pursue this business full time. And what's interesting about that is that he almost majored in history. He originally was on the fence between computer science and history, and he was going to go the history route, but decided to do computer science instead. So once again, another event that we're like, maybe if he would have chosen history as his major, maybe we wouldn't have Facebook, or maybe we would. We don't know, but it's interesting to see the different paths that he could have taken. This guy right here, Michael Jordan, He is known as the greatest basketball player to ever exist. And I recommend that you watch The Last Dance by it's on Netflix. It's really, really good. It's a documentary about him and the Bulls. And he also creates the shoe brand, which many of you may own, his some of his shoes, Air Jordan, and it is through Nike. But it wasn't always going to be through Nike. He actually really wanted to sign originally with Converse because that is what he really liked wearing out on the court. But the person that convinces him to go to the Nike meeting is his own mother, just to hear him out, right? Hear all your options. And he goes and he's still not convinced to go with Nike, but eventually Nike gives him more money than Converse, and they end up creating Air Jordans. So it's interesting to think about what these shoes could look like, right? If they would have signed with Nike, right? It's interesting. So these events can all be seen as a metaphor of like dominoes. Dominoes lined up in a row. And if you take one or two out, it might change the outcome of this whole thing. And looking at this chart, before we look at our primary sources of Hitler today, we are not going to try and analyze explicit knowledge, which is that stuff above the surface, right? In this metaphor of a iceberg, we see our surface level information, which is things that we read about, things that people talk about, stuff like that. We are trying to analyze the below the surface knowledge, which is maybe what was going through Hitler's head, his emotions, his experiences. That's a big thing in these primary sources you're going to read. So we are looking for below the surface knowledge. So what is more important to understand, the end result or the steps that it takes to get there? I believe it is the steps, because you need context to fully understand the end result. I used the example yesterday of the Civil War unit. We learned about Bleeding Kansas, which led up and kind of snowballed into the Civil War. We learned about battles throughout the Civil War. Not Bleeding Kansas, Gettysburg and Fort Sumter. And then we learned at the end that Robert E. Lee signed the surrender at the Appomattox Courthouse. If I didn't tell you any of that other information, I just told you Robert E. Lee signed the treaty at the Appomattox Courthouse, you would be like, who the heck is Robert E. Lee? So it's really important to understand the steps before we get to the end result. And in history classes, what is taught more, the end results or the steps that it took to get to that end result? I just gave that example. We teach the steps and we teach the end results, but it's more important to understand the steps so that we can fully understand the end result. So this is your activity that you're going to do today. We did a group project in class, but what you're just going to do is really quick, read through all those primary sources, and you are going to kind of answer the questions in that graphic organizer. So each of these boxes have a heading which says the source, right? And then type of source. So some of these may be from journals, some of these may be from diaries, stuff like that. Some of these may just be texts. Okay, you can just put that. That is where you're going to put the type of the source. And then a summary, just 3 quick bullet points, what happened in that source, okay? And then looking at that information about what happened, you're going to answer just in a sentence or two, how might this affect Hitler later in life? And I think this will be a good summary looking at that below the surface information, kind of analyzing who Hitler was and maybe how it affected his later decisions. And then, let me get past this timer. And then you are going to see these blank dominoes. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. All of these are in order, okay? So you're just going to put, like this one is domino, this one is the first one. So you're just going to put a dot right here, okay? Domino 1. I'll put a screenshot. Actually, no, I'm just going to show you right now. Bring it up here. So you're going to, in those blank dominoes, put in order these events. Okay. And it's going to look kind of like this. Okay. So that'll go in the first one, second one, third one, fourth one. Okay. That's what you're going to fill in those blank dominoes. So if you need to go back and screenshot this, I would do that right now. Okay. So that is all I have for you. The last thing is make sure you're working on your research project, and we'll see you in the next one.